ongoing improvement efforts.
Okay, then I have one question and one comment. In the inverted pyramid, level 5 at the bottom, co-governance, does getting into level 5 imply that a district has been declared? I'm addressing the regular, where does this fit in with the regulations, and does that mean this is what's called a chronically underperforming district in the regulations?
It would be closest to that, yes.
But a district could get into that without being formally declared by the board to be chronically underperforming?
No, we're assuming that to get 5 would require board action.
Okay.
So just to follow up, Tom, as we kind of get to the finalization of this with the help of the board, it may have implications for making changes in the regulations as they exist now. Okay. Right.
And my comment is essentially the one that I made when you presented this several months ago, and that is when a district gets into levels 4 or 5 here at the bottom. I'm familiar with some of these districts, and so are you, and one doesn't get improvements in those places merely by sending help and telling them about best practices and all those other things that sound good. It doesn't happen, and it won't happen unless there are personnel changes. And when I see co-governance, I assume that might happen. I don't know what might happen in level 4, but I think we need to be realistic. If we want to have a real effect on improving districts that are in that situation, then we have to get quite intrusive. Well, I gave all the reasons for that the last time. I won't repeat them.
Thanks, Tom. Any other questions or comments?
Just one quick.
Sure.
Seems to me that that defining typical is the nub here, and there's that's going to be a subjective designation ultimately. I mean, I don't know how you do that. That's too technical to go into now. But I'd like to just talk about that. How do you define typical? And what if, for example, there's no growth across the state? It just seems to me that somebody's going to have to make a decision about that definition. But maybe I'm wrong about that. But once that's done, I really like this as a simple kind of system, and it seems to me that this could be used for charter school evaluations, district evaluations, classroom evaluations once it really gets worked out and there's general agreement on it, and we could have one kind of standard for defining growth across the state as we look at different entities. That would be a wonderful thing.
Carla, I just have one quick one. Your highlights of progress to date on the accountability system. There's a comment about work underway to get 3 districts whose efforts around regionalization are sort of noteworthy, and I assume that's linking to the readiness agenda around regionalization. And do you think by next meeting you'll be able to talk more specifically about those regions or those efforts, if not today?
I would expect that by the next meeting I'd be able to identify the districts that we're going to look at.
Okay.
If you'd like more conversation about the regional conversation, that involves some other people in the department.
Yeah. Thank you. I hear you. Okay. Yes, Harney.
Thank you. I just had a question about on your highlights of progress. You mentioned that a draft revision of the 10 essential conditions are being circulated or vetted with the field. And I guess for the commissioner, are we thinking that along with possible changes to mirror the whole current system with the new triangle, that there'll be additional 10 essential conditions, or 15 or 8 or whatever? Are we thinking we're going to re-look at that as well? Because I know we had talked about that at the board, that those conditions reflect a different board's priorities and approach.
I think Carla wants to take that one.
Okay.
I think that where we're heading with this requires that we step back and really rewrite the regulations. I mean, as we lay this out, we'll bring a whole proposal that will include some regulatory changes.
Okay, thank you.
And we've got to really, instead of trying to patch them, let's take them from what the system really wanted to do, put that into regulatory language that we would bring for the board's consideration.
We,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just to build on what Carla said, and we're in a very active conversation, pick up Tom's admonition, around initially a conceptual framework, and you've seen the outline of it with the triangle, but actually aiming toward drafting some legislation that would bring this to life, and that would in fact really raise the stakes for schools and districts that are in those lower couple of tiers, and lower the degrees of freedom that the districts have in terms of the decisions that they make about those schools and districts, including around staffing. So we're very actively thinking through that. We're not yet ready to kind of vet that at this point, other than at the level of the triangle diagram that you see it right here.
Thank you, Mitchell. Sandra, you had a question?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that this was the appropriate time to ask about this, but I know that we were discussing this at some of the meeting a while ago in relation to this, because we had heard from one of the turnaround partners. And what I wanted to find out was, do we have any evaluative data on all of the turnaround partners, what their costs are, and what we're now investing in them, and what results we're getting, and how that relates to any of this? I got lost somewhere in this much larger picture, I'm sorry to say, because we had a number of school systems that were at that high level before, that were almost moribund, or whatever, and they had turnaround partners. And the question was, what was the cost of those turnaround? My question was, what is the cost of those turnaround partners? Do we have any evaluative data on what they are accomplishing, and how does that relate to what you have here? Because I really can't grasp how all of that fits together, sorry.
Well, we're certainly drawing on our current experiences in Massachusetts and looking at what we understand to be some of the impacts of the turnaround programs here. But we're really more importantly, in a way, drawing on the experiences of other states and cities that have had aggressive intervention models in place for more than a couple of years, and we're trying to draw on the expertise and experiences there to help inform our work moving forward.
But how does that impact these turnaround contracts that are, as far as I know, still ongoing, but I'm not sure?
Yes.
How much money is invested in that? Can any of that money, when can some of that stop if there's no sign that there's any real progress, which is what the issue that we were discussing, so that then that money would be available for other purposes?
I think that as we develop this and frame this out specifically with the regulatory, the statutory, and the meat behind it, then this will shape steps moving forward, and where there are better solutions for turnaround support, we'll invest in those and not invest in those that are not having the impact that we need them to have. So I absolutely believe that some resources that we're now spending, this is designed to figure out a way to get more result for those dollars and the other dollars that we will invest in really effective intervention.
Continuing, those are still ongoing?
This year, yes.
Oh,
Those commitments are in place for this year.
Not necessarily for next year?
Not necessarily for next year.
Mara,
Made through this year.
Yes.
Mara, can I add something?
Sure, Ruth.
I just wanted to add on to Sandra's comment there. Is there any way, Carla, that we could actually get, a list of who the contractors are, what district they're in, and what we're spending on them?
Yes, we can get that information for you.
Because I think it would just really be helpful for us to understand what we're talking about.
Yes, we can get that information for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any last comments? Yes, Tom.
Just a request. A request. The 10, or however many there are now, essential conditions are really at the heart of the current regulations on accountability. I'd like to get a look at a draft at some point of what you're thinking along those lines, that, that we could have time to think about and perhaps respond to before having to come to a board meeting and vote to send it out to public comment. So at whatever point it's appropriate,
Yep.
I'd love to have something to read.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Carla and Linda. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to hearing more next month. Okay. We're going to return to charter school business under tab 6, specifically after tab B, which I call 6.2. And I thank you, Jeff and Mary, for joining. I didn't even get to asking you to join. You're wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Last month we discussed 6 of these charter schools: Barnstable Horace Mann, Marston Mills, Boston Preparatory, River Valley, Roxbury Prep, and Salem Academy. This month, we're going to vote on these, and some are pretty straightforward, and some have conditions. So I know this is, we've got to pay quick and solid attention to each of these as we go through them. Can we start with Barnstable Horace Mann?
Could we vote them as a group?
Can we vote them as a group, is what they're asking.
Well, I don't know the answer to that, Madam Chair, but if you think it's appropriate, I might just make comments about them in total, because I don't know that I need to make individual comments about them.
Well, I think that's appropriate. Go ahead.
Okay, so for all 6 of these, a moment of indiscretion, if I might, Madam Chair, just the 10 essential conditions reminds me of Mel Brooks' History of the World. Has anybody seen those? Where the 10 Commandments were originally 15, but Moses drops one of the tablets. So we're renumbering the 10 essential conditions. Excuse me for that moment of indiscretion. Back to business. I am recommending that all 6 of these be renewed. I think 5 of them are very solid, and in fact, I think the 6th has quite a bit going for it. The only one in which I'm recommending conditions is the Salem charter school, Salem Academy Charter School. I did visit that school myself. Mary and I both visited, met with the leadership in the school, toured the school, talked to students, talked to faculty. The conditions for that renewal that we've made very clear with the school are that they need to provide appropriate services for English language learners. They're in the process of piecing that together. I'm confident they'll get there, but that is the one condition that we're asking to adopt in regard to that school. The others, I think, are quite solid.
Doesn't Benjamin have conditions?
Yeah, they're
I'm
later.
sorry?
They're later.
Oh, that's
they're
later. I'm
separate. That's
sorry.
okay. That's all right. That's a good
Oh, I'm
point.
sorry.
So I'm looking at my board members here now to make sure that it is okay. I know that we've all read these reports, we've just heard from the commissioner, but you may have questions on individual schools. Do you want to vote on them individually? Do you want to vote on them as a group? Do you want to pause and ask for questions? Group?
Mara, I would like to vote on them individually.
Okay.
I have just a question about a charter question, just if you could help me, and I asked Heidi, and she didn't have a chance to get back to me. If you're a charter school and you're chartered by a city or town, like the Gloucester School, for example, this morning, are you required to only accept, I was just confused in reading through some of these, are you required to only accept people from that city or town, or if there's slots, can anyone come? And what's the difference between a regional or a city or town charter school?
A charter school is identified either with a specific city or town.
Okay.
Or if it's a regional school, it is identified with 2 or more cities or towns together as being their service region. Anybody may apply to a charter school, and in fact, the charter school that has space available must accept students from wherever they live. The only difference is that preference is given in the enrollment process to the residents of either the town or the region.
So if something's a city school and they have a large number of students not from that city or town, we would assume that people just didn't apply from that city or town. It's not like you're all equal in the lottery. You first take your own town, and then if there's slots, you take the out of town? Okay.
And that's
Thank you.
in fact the case with the Banneker, right?
What?
The Banneker is an example of that.
Okay.
Okay. I've had a quick, yes, AJ.
This pertains to, sorry, It's Barnstable Horseman in general, but kind of stretching it out a little bit more because this could come up in further questions. When a town only does have one school for its region that is a charter school, what would happen? Not that this reflects any of my beliefs on this said school, but what would happen if that charter were revoked?
Then the district would be responsible for making arrangements for the.
Okay, so like they'd have to create another school following that, or?
So,
Oh, for a horseman charter. Oh.
okay. I want to remind the board that next month, the evening before our board meeting, we're going to spend time on charter schools. And I would ask you all to get to me or to get to Commissioner Chester with things that you'd like to learn about charter schools if you don't already know them. I think collectively we have a lot of wisdom, but there are questions that come up, and we have the experts here, and we'll put together a good session for the night before the board meeting. So.
And Madam Chair, just as a follow-up to Rachel's question on the Barnstable, both of those schools are Horace Mann schools. I just want to remind the board members that the district is going through a redistricting plan that may have an impact on one or both of those schools, grade spans and neighborhoods and all that. Both charter schools are cooperating with the district, but the district hasn't finalized those plans yet, so they will likely be coming back to us later in the spring for a charter amendment to reflect their region.
Okay, Jeff, thank you. All right, I've had a quick conversation with the commissioner, and we've decided to go through them individually and quickly because I know folks have read these. So I'm going to start with the Horace Mann Charter School, which, as we know, is in Barnstable, a 5-6 school with a 1,000-person enrollment. And I'm going to ask that someone move the motion to renew their charter. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. This is to make sure that folks have an opportunity school by school to ask a question. The next school is Marston Mills East Horace Mann Charter Public School, again in Barnstable, grades K4, 475 students. I'm going to ask someone to move the motion that their charter be renewed.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's carried. Boston Preparatory School, with 350 students serving grades 6 through 10. If anyone wants to discuss these schools, I'm going to count on you stopping me and not going through these votes. Let me ask that someone move the motion that the charter be renewed here. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The River Valley School in Newburyport.
Did you skip?
Did I skip one?
No, you're there.
Okay.
Yep.
Serving grades K through 8. May I ask for a motion to approve the renewal of their charter? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Roxbury Preparatory School.
Point of information,
Yep.
the last page, page 31 of Roxbury Prep, looks like it's for a different school. They're in corrective action? That's a mistake? Okay, all right.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, in Boston, Roxbury Preparatory Charter School is serving grades 6 through 8 and has a current enrollment of 300 students. May I ask for a motion to renew their charter?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. All right, and last we have the Salem School, and as the commissioner said earlier, he's recommending the renewal of their charter with conditions. And so I want to make sure that we read the conditions that are right before tab C as we vote on this motion. So they are that by September 2009, the school will establish and operate a program of ELL education in a manner consistent with the requirements of the law. The school will demonstrate meeting this condition by fully implementing all elements of the corrective action plan as approved by the department on October 10th, 2008. May I have a motion to renew the charter of this public school? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Mara, could I make a comment?
Absolutely, Ruth.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that condition was added to the renewal, but I have to say I've really struggled over this particular school, I'm just, after having reviewed the materials that came in, particularly from the superintendent and some of the school committee members, I just have a real problem in voting to approve this renewal, and I just wanted to remind us all that, you know, the particular issue that was raised, I thought, so persuasively in that opposition was the issue of students who are transient, who come in and out of the Salem district and as a result are foreclosed from being serviced by this school because of the manner in which the enrollment works. I know that's the larger issue for charter schools in general, but I believe last month we heard about a charter school that did allow people midterm. So notwithstanding this condition that's added, I'm not going to vote to approve this renewal, and I just wanted to explain my reasoning for that. I also was persuaded that I really did not see that there was the kind of innovation that is called for in the statute going on here.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay, may I call for a motion?
You have the motion.
I already did that, I guess. Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
I'm opposed.
Have it. Thanks, Ruth. Thank you very much. The motion has been carried. We're now going to talk about two charter schools that were previously reviewed by this board with conditions, and I'm going to ask the commissioner to give us an update on their progress.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. First is Benjamin Banneker Charter School, was renewed with 3 conditions in January of '06, it has not met 2 of those 3 conditions, and they have to do with academic progress. I am recommending that we renew, subject to the condition that by December 2009 they demonstrate that academic progress by meeting benchmarks that we set with the school, and that in addition that if they're successful, we would then allow them to continue at an increased enrollment.
If I could just clarify, this is not a renewal. They're in the middle of their charter term, but it's based on probationary status.
Because they didn't meet their last,
They did not meet the conditions that were imposed at the time.
when we rechartered them?
Renewal in 2006.
What does probationary status mean beyond the conditions?
It has no formal definition or meaning, but it's just, again, just used to enforce that these conditions are so important that failure to meet them could very well result in revocation or not.
So it means we meet it this time. Well, this is a 13-year school, right? After 13 years, we should meet it this time.
Okay, I think I'm going to call for someone to move this motion, and then we'll discuss it.
I just wanted to say one more thing. I just found it very interesting.
We're going to discuss it still, okay, unless it's the...
You want to call them, make the motion?
So moved.
Okay, second? All right, let's have some discussion. Sorry, AJ.
All right. I just also wanted to say I personally don't like relying fully on MCAS scores, but I found it very interesting that given the fact that it's a science and technology focused charter school, that their scores on the science MCAS were not in any way really to serve as an exemplar or to show any sort of innovation. So I definitely think that, as Jeff said, after 13 years, we better meet it this time. We should definitely look at pledging ourselves to saying, we meet it this time, if you're not committed to the science advancement that I think should be done. So.
Thank you, AJ. Other...
Can I just,
Yes.
I just have a question about it. I mean, one of the things, it seems like there's a lot of turnover at the school, and I didn't know, or that one of the reasons it said was a lot of new staff were for some of the conditions, and I wondered if you had a sense of why. New executive director, many new experienced staff, that's one of the reasons they gave. But back to that, now that Tom raised that issue here, I'm noticing that, do we know why, if it's a Cambridge school, 57% of its students come from Boston? I mean, is that typical? I mean, I assume when the school opened, I wasn't part of it, but that people thought they would be for Cambridge kids. So I'm just wondering, is that normal? I didn't really know that was a rule, so I'm just now kind of aware of it. So I'm just, haven't noticed if that's common for our charters that they do that or not common.
I think given the size of Cambridge, many of us would have expected a larger portion of their enrollment to come from Cambridge.
Huh. And do you have any sense of the turnover issue? Just life?
Teacher turnover?
Well, it just said organizational viability, that they've attributed, it was a big transitional year, new executive director and many new and inexperienced staff who received insufficient support and training. I just didn't know, did something happen, or?
I think the long-term executive director did leave.
Huh.
I think that was
A big change.
Big change.
I guess I just want to make a comment about the school, because it seems like the population the school's serving is very parallel to the population that Patrick is proposing be served in charter schools going forward. And there's a lot of challenges here, and so I'm just wondering, maybe for the discussion on next month or something, we need to think about if the charter schools are going in this direction, and we had Upham's Corner, and this complex kids with a lot of challenges coming into the schools. How are we approaching? I don't know if there's something to do different, but it's very different than the charter in Newburyport in terms of who those kids are and kind of what they're walking in the door with. And so I just think, I'm sorry. I was just saying, I think that if these are where this school reflects where Patrick's proposal around where charter schools, the student population that charters would serve in the future. And so thinking about this school, thinking about Upham's Corner last month, I mean, I think it's just kids with a lot of complexity and challenges walking in the door, and how are we supporting the schools, or what are we doing, or if this is where charters are going to be going. I don't have an answer. I'm just putting it out that it makes me thoughtful about, we're going to see more schools with perhaps scores like this, et cetera, and how are we evaluating the schools, and are there other methods or mechanisms we should be looking at, I guess.
Yes, Commissioner.
Did you want to say something, Jeff?
Well,
I'm sorry.
just to add to that,
No.
It's not just Upham's Corner, it's also Roxbury Prep and Boston Prep, which are serving the same populations. So when you have a school that's gone this long, I haven't seen the whole record, but I suspect without distinction, how long is too long? And what signal are we sending to this population when we allow this to continue without moving on it?
Madam Chair, if I might, I think these are really critical issues for us to tackle. And I can't speak to the long-range history, but I can speak to this recommendation. I have visited the school, the executive director sitting in the back. He is new, I think second year, if I'm remembering, second year. An experienced school leader, who the school has brought in because they understand that they're not doing as well as they need to be doing. I saw a lot of very positive things. They've really, this school with its board has really tapped into a wide range of resources in the Cambridge community and elsewhere. I think part of the challenge for the school is going to be to knit those resources together in a coherent approach rather than a bunch of fragmented kinds of initiatives, and the executive director and I had that conversation when I did visit the school. But I do believe, based on what I saw, that I think this school deserves this shot to make a go of it at this point. Again, I can't speak to the longer history of this.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. Go ahead, Tom.
Two questions. Is there a waiting list? Yes, there is an active waiting list right now. How long? I want to say 270 some odd.
Interesting. And my other question for Jeff and Mary is, the CPI charts that you give us only go back 4 years. This is a 13-year school. Can you just tell us quickly what's the history like? I mean, did they have an outstanding record and then fell down, or has it always looked like this?
Well, this goes on to 2000.
I don't have the previous charts here.
Look on page,
Tell them today. I'm happy to get them for you.
look on page 14, it goes to 2004.
Key history is here.
The CPI history is on page for math.
Well,
is
yeah, I was asking, that only goes back 4 years. I was just curious to know whether,
2004.
Go
2004.
on page 14, if you look at the graph.
I mean, it gives you some data.
yeah.
4,
So it's 4 years.
5, 6. Okay, I think it's time to call for a vote here. So the motion is in play. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. All right. North Central School, and Commissioner, would you like to make some comments? The school is in Fitchburg, as we know.
Yeah, and I'm just calling Jeff up, Jeff Melhouse up to the table too, because Jeff's actually done the direct school visit with, on this school. I've tried to get to every school where we're recommending conditions. For logistical reasons, I was unable to do this visit directly, but this is a charter school that was renewed with conditions in '07, almost about a year, 2 years ago. We're in '09 now. The school, there were 4 conditions placed on the school at the time, and they've met 3 of the 4. The one that they've only partially met, again, relates to academic success, and which was tied to AYP in this regard. And I'm recommending that we continue the school with the condition that they continue to make progress and meet this academic growth target in English language arts and math by December of 2009.
Thank you. Okay, can I have someone move this? Second? Okay, let's have some discussion here. Questions for Jeff? Or Jeff or Mary? So the summary here is that you've seen progress on 3 of 4 areas and that you want to continue the condition, and if the condition isn't met, then in a year's time they'd be placed on probation. Is that the correct summary? All right. Seeing no questions or comments, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary and Jeff. Do you have any final comments?
Actually, I just wanted to remind the chair that we skipped item 5 on the agenda, which need not be lengthy, but I just want to make sure we have these brief discussion.
Oh, I know I wasn't about to close the agenda. I actually went through the voting first in case people had to leave, but thank you, Jeff. Okay, we are at item 5, which is the proposed revision to the graduation rate standard for FY09, and this is the initial discussion. And so I'm going to turn to the Commissioner to take us through his recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for discussion and asking you to vote next month. Under the No Child Left Behind federal law, each state is required to set targets in a number of areas, one of which is graduation rate targets. Massachusetts has initially set a target of a 55% graduation rate, or improvement of at least 2 points in the graduation rate in order to meet the federal AYP, adequate yearly progress standards. Last year, we raised that rate to 60%, or a 2-point improvement. And we did that with the acceptance of the U.S. Department of Ed on the condition that we revisit that rate again this year, because the U.S. Department of Ed was concerned that we weren't being ambitious enough. And so we are proposing that we move the target for the 08-09 year, the year that we're in, to 65%. And this would apply backwards to the class of 2008, because that's the data that we apply to. We lag a year, or a 2-point increase in the 4-year graduation rate between the class of 07 and 08. I've outlined for you in my memo why I think this is an appropriate increase. I think it will be sufficient for the U.S. Department of Ed, but before we bring it to the U.S. Department of Ed, we would ask you to adopt this next month, is that right? Yep. So this is just in front of you right now as an information piece. Next month, we'll ask you to adopt it.
Yes, Tom?
I'm disappointed that the feds didn't go along with the 5-year rate. It seems to me the 5-year graduation rate is extremely relevant, and I don't understand why they don't want to touch that. So I don't want to drag this on, but there's a little more information that I would appreciate seeing when this comes back next month. And part of that is how are we doing, and how, in fact, are individual districts doing on the 60% hurdle and the 65% 5-year hurdle. And when we discussed this last year, we had some big charts show, breaking it all down by districts and percentiles and so on, and sort of giving us a statistical picture of what it looks like across the Commonwealth. And I'd like to see some of that again.
Sure, absolutely.
Mara, can I ask a question?
Sure, Ruth.
I'm just kind of stepping back from this a couple of steps and just asking sort of a bigger question. I mean, when we look at No Child Left Behind, you have that idea of, by the year 2014, everyone should achieve proficiency. And I'm wondering why we don't have a bigger, more ambitious vision about graduation. I mean, why shouldn't we be aiming for 100% graduation rate? I don't mean next year necessarily. It's something to aim for, but this to me, it just seems that by having the kind of numbers we're talking about here, we're kind of, as a society, we're willing to accept, the inevitability of dropouts. And why can't we have a more ambitious vision about the graduation rate?
I think that's a great question, and a lot of people would argue, and I think you're making the point, graduation rate's as critical as any indicator we have in the system, because students who don't make it through have really reduced life opportunities. So, I think that the path that we're on, Ruth, I would argue, is an appropriate path. This will be the second year in a row that we've raised it by 5 percentage points. It helps us identify and isolate those schools and districts where things are the most dire in terms of students' progression through the system. And it also is, I think, responsive to the tremendous gaps that we have in graduation rates based on race, ethnicity, based on special ed status, based on English language background, based on income background. There's some really substantial disparities, in setting the rate where we are right now helps us to really hone in on those.
So just to add, just to come back, and I know it's late, but I really would love to see us just take a much more aggressive and ambitious stand on dropouts, and take at least by talking about it in a more ambitious terms, I think that's even the first step. There's no reason why we should. And by the way, I'm not opposed to using a 5-year standard. I don't think there's a problem with that. But I think that as a society, certainly as a state that prides itself on being number one in many respects, we should be number one on the graduation rate, and we should aim for 100% graduation rate.
Is it a moving target? I mean, are you moving it progressively, year over year, or?
If the board adopts this recommendation, this would be the second year in a row in which we've moved it up.
So we can decide to make this a tougher target every year or every other year or something.
Oh. Yeah.
Go ahead, Harney.
Thank you. I would like to see how, like Tom said, how we're doing, how many schools have met the 60% or the 2% increase before I would vote on this. If folks remember, one of the reasons we voted on a fairly moderate graduation rate last year, or the year before, whenever that was, is because if we had voted on a higher graduation rate, so many of our schools would have failed. And what's the point of setting a target when we know, whatever high percentage of our schools were going to fail? What's the message it sends to our public, to our community, to our kids? So I feel like we need to balance being realistic with being positive. I think the other concern that was raised was, what kind of supports and resources are available to deal with different dropout recovery and retention programs. And I don't know if any additional resources or programs have started up or been implemented in various places. It doesn't seem to me like we've heard. I mean, I know that there was the recent Rennie Center report and presentation, but you know, the crisis continues, and without major interventions, just setting a target, you know, as a stick or carrot or whatever, isn't in and of itself going to make schools all of a sudden retain students that would be leaving anyway.
With respect to the first question, our data indicate that increasing the standard to 65% would probably mean a very small handful of schools would not make AYP, would otherwise make it.
So maybe we just, I know you have the list, you probably, when you emailed that to us, but I myself didn't print that out, so maybe we could get that next time.
Thank you. Yes, AJ had a question. I'm sorry, you've been waiting.
I was going to, first of all, agree with what Tom said. I was going to say that initially, which was when I was looking over board packets last year, one of the things I liked the most was that we started to transfer it from a 4-year to a 5-year, so I'm actually upset that that didn't carry through federally. But also, I saying that it's probably been about a year since I've looked at a lot of that data, so also in the next month, could you provide some information about, I don't know how readily available it is, but students that would have graduated in 4 or 5 years but did not appear to do so because of transfers or changing schools. I don't know how readily that is available, but if
We take that into account. Those aren't considered.
oh, that is considered in the short.
If they transfer to another school, then they're excluded from the cohort.
Yeah,
Graduation.
Okay.
And I want to be cognizant that we don't ask the department for information that we can't get, but I know that a lot of the discussion around dropout is around students who can't stay in the system because of economic circumstances, teen pregnancy, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, the more we can glean from other groups that are looking at this and studying it, the better off we'll be. I know Tom had a question. You have a comment as well.
I was just going to add another request, if it's available, some information about comparison of how we're doing against other states.
My takeaway, Madam Chair, from this discussion is we will bring to the board for next month and send you in advance some information on the impact of the current rate, new proposed rate, some information on the comparative data is a little harder to generate. You've got a bunch of national studies, we'll dig some up, but not every state is tracking individual students, so you've got a little apples to apples challenge in looking across various states. But in addition, in response to Harneen's, we'll also bring you some information about some of the initiatives underway to try and reduce the dropout issue.
Okay. Yes.
Could I just ask, in connection with your saying you were going to gather information across states, to gather some information on what the graduation rates are for the VOTEC schools in other states, because we know that we have almost a zilch attrition rate in our own regional VOTEC schools. Once kids enter in grade 9, just about all of them stay and graduate. And I have no idea what national statistics are across states, and it may depend on the type of VOTEC school or whatever. But that suggests one major area for getting at what Harneen was talking, and Ruth were talking about too, about how do you keep kids in school? Obviously, you can't jail kids over 16 who want to drop out, whatever the legal age is in a state. It does vary, by the way, I understand there are states that have raised the legal dropout age, which is a different issue, and I'm not trying to get into that issue. But the issue is that when there are some curricular options that matter to kids and they can make choices, at least that one kind of schooling seems to keep the kids who get into it. There may be various admission requirements in different states. I don't know how that works out. But it suggests that here's an avenue to explore if we're trying to increase the high school graduation rate for at least one large, very large group of kids.
Great point.
We'll look to see what we can find. Once you do the cross-state comparatives and you disaggregate below the state level, you're really dealing with an apples-to-apples concern about what you're looking at. But we'll look.
Okay, great. I think I'm going to close this section and thank Jeff and your colleague. I'm sorry not to know your name, but thank you for being with
Rob Curtin.
Rob, I know you. I'm yeah, Rob, another over 50 moment. We worked together a couple of years ago. Nice to see you. So as I close the board meeting today, I'm going to thank all of our guests for their thoughtful comments and their participation. This wasn't the easiest of meetings. We had to make some very tough decisions, so I thank my fellow board members for their thoughtful dialogue and for their action today. Have a nice day, and is there something you have to do before I close the meeting, Tom?
I have a question. You mentioned a meeting about charter schools. Is that going to be?
It's the evening before the next board meeting.
The evening before the March meeting. Do we have other evenings scheduled? And I request that we get the rest of our meetings on the calendar through the end of the year or even further, because I'm trying to make arrangements for next fall and for the holidays. And last year we ended up with a conflict with the STEM summit. I think we should get our meetings on the calendar now.
Okay. Well, and I will agree to do that if I hear from board members about what you want to talk about in these meetings. So I think we're going to have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of work to do on our major. Jeff's new committee is going to create an awful lot of work. But
Mara, is there a time for that meeting, that evening meeting?
well, generally we meet from 5:30 to 8:30, but that's subject to what works for the board. And we'll get notification out to people as soon as we can about where it will be. And again, I asked you earlier to tell me what you'd like to learn in that session. We'll do our best to provide that, what you want to hear about.
Yes, can I'd like to ask for the next meeting, because it is going to be on charter schools as the prime discussion, but could you also bring into leveraging charter schools with readiness pilot? I had a conversation with the secretary who gave me an entire history, quickly forgotten, because you don't use it, you lose it. But perhaps charting it out or something that shows this is charter school and this is what they were put in place to do. Here's readiness, here's pilot, and I know they cross over or they don't. But when you're thinking about a district, what's in it, what you're looking to develop, looking at having all of these pieces in the front of you can help you determine, is this the right place to go to charter school, or is it better for us to be focusing on readiness?
I hear you, I hear you.
And then who are the charter schools, and maybe charge it just rates them, how many we have, and rating them in reference to their effectiveness.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what the charter people want to present to us next time. But Madam Chair, I would request that you ask us, this is a really critical topic. We're spending the majority,
3 meetings,
we spend the majority of our time talking about schools that have 300 kids.
I understand that.
One by one. When are we going to start talking about districts? So we got a lot of issues around charter schools to discuss. And I would recommend you poll us as to what we'd like to talk about.
I will do that.
Different than what the department people want to present.
Thank you, Jeff. That's what I was trying to say earlier. You will be polled. Thank you. Sandra, did you have any comments?
I just wanted to ask about the directions, if you had given any to this committee, which I think is a nice idea that Jeff will be leading, what they are actually going to be doing or looking at for performance gaps. I mean, maybe you have some ideas to suggest. I'm just trying to get a sense of what we are to expect out of this, whatever it is, 9-month process.
If I may, I would hope that by the next meeting, the committee would be prepared to, we will have met, I expect, at least once again, and we'll be prepared to talk more intelligently than I can now about where we think we're going.
In terms of data sources, what kind of information you will be gathering.
Exactly that.
Okay.
And for what purpose?
Yes, and where you get your data from. I mean, I'm just sort of curious.
Yeah, well, I got a good idea where I'm going to get the data from.
Okay.
You're not going to generate it.
All right. Well, thank you again, my fellow board members. I wish you all a nice day, and our meeting is adjourned. Take care.
Thank you.